Quan stood on the main concourse of the Aegis station and felt a quiet pride. The floor beneath his boots was a marvel. It was not just a surface to walk on. It was a statement. Made from a blended nanoalloy, it could change its texture in a moment to give grip to a being with suction cups or claws. It could absorb the tremendous impact of a dropped cargo crate. It was, as the station's official plan stated, fortified for security. It was designed to handle anything the galaxy's many species could accidentally throw at it. He watched the busy traffic of the concourse. A group of slender, glass-like beings from the Crystal Federation glided past, their steps making no sound. Behind them, a hulking Torvan engineer named GRZZ walked with a heavy, thumping gait that Quan felt in his bones. The floor softened subtly under GRZZ's feet, cushioning each step to prevent damage. It worked perfectly. It always did. Quan was the lead human architect on the station's maintenance team. He took his job seriously. The Aegis was a symbol of the Galactic Concord, a place where dozens of species lived and worked together in peace. Peace relied on things not breaking. It relied on floors that did not fracture. His personal communicator chimed. It was Myung. Her face appeared on the screen, smiling and framed by the colorful fabrics of the cultural preparation hall. Quan, are you hiding in the ducts again? I need a final check on the stage markings. I am doing real work, Myung, he said, but he could not stop a small smile. Checking the integrity of the performance area. Unlike some, I think about structural safety. Myung laughed. She was a xenopsychologist. Her job was to understand how different species thought and felt. To Quan, her work seemed soft, full of talk and ideas. His work was hard, made of metal and data. They were friends from university on Earth, but they often saw the galaxy from very different angles. Our performance will be the safest event on the schedule, she said. Unless you're scared of a few drums. It's not the drums I worry about. It's the drummers, Quan joked. I'll be there in 5 minutes. He took one last look at the concourse. The great dome above showed the swirling blue and purple of the nebula the station orbited. The sight never got old. As he turned to leave, he saw GRZZ approaching. The Torvan was broad and covered in a thick, stony hide. His species came from a high-gravity world. To them, the station's standard gravity felt like walking on air. Architect Quan, GRZZ rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. A word about the human event. Of course, Quan said, standing a little straighter. The schematics show your group will be using the central concourse stage. My team has concerns about dynamic loading. GRZZ's large, dark eyes studied him. Your people are flexible. Your movements can be unpredictable. Quan nodded. He had expected this. The Concorde's security protocols were thorough, and the Torvan were famously cautious engineers. The stage and the surrounding 30 meters have been reinforced with the same nanoalloy as the main walkways. It has a maximum load capacity of 15 tons per square meter. The performance involves 4 humans and their instruments. The total mass is less than 400 kilograms. The floor is more than capable. It is not the static mass that concerns us, GRZZ said slowly, as if explaining to a child. It is the force, the kinetic energy. I have reviewed human dance and musical files. There is jumping. There is stomping. Quan felt a flicker of professional annoyance. He pulled a small data pad from his belt. With a few taps, he brought up a security simulation. It showed a schematic of the floor and a red, human-shaped figure. Watch, he said. The figure jumped and landed with a force impact marker. The numbers were tiny. The floor's damping systems are calibrated for Torvan casual walking, which exerts more than 3 times this force. It can handle a Class 3 cargo loader driving over it. Our cultural performance is aesthetic, not structural. There is no danger. GRZZ stared at the numbers for a long moment. He then looked back at Quan. Your confidence is noted, but security is not just about numbers. It is about anticipating the unknown. The unknown has been anticipated, Quan said firmly. The floor was fortified for security. It will hold. GRZZ gave a slow, doubtful nod and moved away, his steps once again absorbed by the intelligent surface below. Quan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding and made his way to the cultural hall. He found Mi-young directing two younger assistants, Su-min and June, as they carefully placed traditional Korean drums on a low stage. The drums, a large jangu, a deep bouk, and two smaller gongs, looked humble and organic against the station's sleek walls. Finally, Mi-young said, "Come. Tell Su-min she is worrying too much about the placement of the kwangwari." Su-min, a young woman with focused eyes, looked up. "If the stand is even 2 centimeters off, Daehyun's strike will be at the wrong angle. The sound will be flat." "See," Mi-young said to Quan. "This is the level of detail we care about, not stress tolerances." Quan walked over and scanned the stage area with his datapad, running a standard integrity check. The readings were all green. "The stage is perfect. Could support a small vehicle. Your gong placement is safe from a structural point of view." Su-min did not look fully satisfied, but she nodded. Mi-young stepped closer to Quan, her voice lowering. "Thank you for dealing with GRZZ. I heard he was asking questions. He's just doing his job. Everyone is cautious. No one wants an incident," Quan said, looking at the drums. "This is important to you." "It's important for us," Mi-young corrected gently. "The Concord sees humans as good at diplomacy and technology. They see us as adaptable, but they don't understand our weight, our history. This music, Samulnori, it comes from farmers, from people who worked the land with their hands and feet. The rhythm is the rhythm of planting, of rain, of community work. It is not light or careful. It is powerful and shared. It has weight." Quan listened. He understood history, but he thought in terms of measurable things. "Well, just make sure the weight stays within the parameters on my datapad. I don't want any surprises." "The only surprise," Mi-young said, her eyes shining, "will be how beautiful it is." As Quan left the hall, he felt the firm, unyielding surface of the corridor under his feet. It was the most secure floor in the sector. It was designed to protect, to endure, to separate the safe interior of the station from the deadly void outside. The idea that 4 humans with drums could challenge that security was not just unlikely. It was, according to all his training and all the numbers, impossible. The floor was fortified. It would hold. He believed that with every fiber of his being. It was the one thing he did not question. Across the station, in a monitoring hub that smelled of ozone and warm metal, GRZZ reviewed the data from his conversation with Quan. The human architect was skilled, GRZZ admitted to himself. His numbers were correct. But numbers were a snapshot and security was a moving picture. To the Galactic Concord, humanity was a curious, middle-of-the-road species. They were not exceptionally strong like the Torvan. They were not exceptionally fragile like the Crystal Federation. They were not incredibly dense nor extremely light. In the great catalog of species, humans were physically average. Their security profiles reflected this. Most protocols for humans focused on their atmospheric needs, their tolerance for radiation, their cleverness with computer systems, and their sometimes unpredictable psychological profiles. Physical threats from humans were understood to be things like projectile weapons, powered tools, or explosives, things any species might use. The station's defenses were built against these. The floors, walls, and ceilings were hardened against sudden, violent impacts. They could disperse energy from a blast. They could resist the cutting force of industrial machinery. GRZZ's people, the Torvan, thought in terms of mass and pressure. Their homeworld's gravity meant that from birth, they understood the relentless, constant force of weight. A Torvan child could accidentally crack a standard starship deck plate by stumbling. Their entire civilization was engineered for immense static loads. When they fortified something, they fortified it against gravity itself. As he scrolled through the human cultural file for Samulnori, GRZZ saw moving pictures of groups of humans hitting drums and dancing. He analyzed it with his engineering software. The individual footfalls, the arm movements, the strikes on the instruments, all registered as low-yield kinetic events. The software, programmed with Concord-wide standards, flagged nothing. No single action exceeded the stress threshold of a standard residential floor, let alone the Aegis's fortified concourse. His second-in-command, a younger Torvan named Brun, leaned over his shoulder. The soft skin's festival music? Brun's tone was not unkind, merely dismissive. Why does it get your hide in a crack? It is not the what, GRZZ rumbled, pausing the video on a frame of a human dancer in midair. It is the how. Look at the synchronization. Every individual moves in a perfect time pattern. Brun looked. Efficiency of motion. It is aesthetically pleasing to them, perhaps. Changes nothing. A jump is a jump. The force of landing is calculable. GRZZ switched to a different file, an old Earth study on bridge collapses. He pointed a thick finger at the text. Human structures on their own world have failed due to rhythmic crowd loading. Many individuals walking in step. The force is not random. It becomes a wave. A repeated, rhythmic wave. Brun read the data. A primitive planet with primitive materials. Stone. Steel. Not nanoalloy. Not active damping systems. The Concorde left such problems behind centuries ago. Our floors sense pressure and adjust in milliseconds. They dampen vibration. They cannot be made to wobble. That is the assumption, GRZZ said quietly. The assumption was the foundation of the Aegis's design. The station was a tapestry of different needs. Some corridors were kept moist for ammonia breathers. Others were dry and dusty for the desert folk. The floors were the universal constant. They were the solid, reliable ground that made coexistence possible. Their security was a promise. No matter who you are or what you do, this surface will support you and contain you. The security logic was flawless. A being might go mad and try to smash a wall. The wall would hold. A chemical spill might eat through a conduit. The floor beneath would seal and neutralize it. A human might bring a weapon aboard. The security fields would detect and disable it. But a cultural performance? A display of joy and tradition? That was not in the threat database. It was a positive event, a celebration of unity. The security systems were blind to it. They were programmed to look for conflict, for danger, for the opposite of harmony. GRZZ thought about Quan's confident face. The human believed in his numbers. Gur believed in physics. Physics stated that energy could not be created or destroyed, only transformed. Where was the energy in this human ritual going? The sound would travel through the air, absorbed by the acoustic panels. The light would be reflected. The physical energy of their movements, the foot stomps, the drum strikes, would transfer into the floor. The floor was designed to absorb and disperse random, chaotic energy. What would it do with a steady, pounding, perfectly timed stream of it? He opened a direct channel to Quan's datapad. The human architect's face appeared, a little surprised. Architect Quan, a final query. Your performers, their movements, how synchronized are they? Quan blinked. Very. They practice for months. It's about being exactly together. Why? And the rhythm. It is constant, a repeated pattern. It builds in intensity, but yes, the tempo is locked. It's the heart of the music. Is there a problem? GRZZ chose his words carefully. He did not want to cause alarm over a feeling. The problem may be one of category. Our systems define threats as isolated, hostile events. Your performance is a coordinated, repeated event. The floor's damping systems are reactive. They respond to impact. I am uncertain if they are designed to analyze and counteract a resonant pattern. He saw Quan's face shift from confusion to polite professionalism. Engineer GRZZ, with respect, the reactive systems are exactly for that. Each impact will be dampened. The fact that they happen in a rhythm doesn't change the physical force of each one. The math is sound. You trust your math, GRZZ stated. I trust the floor, Quan replied. GRZZ ended the call. He sat back in his chair, which groaned under his weight. He looked at the frozen image of the human dancers. Their faces were alive with effort and joy. He did not understand the joy, not in that way. But he understood effort. He understood force. The humans were not trying to be a threat. That was the core of the issue. The station was fortified against intentional harm, against accident, against the known dangers of 1,000 species. But it was not fortified against the unintended consequence of perfect human unity. The floor was strong, but was it listening? And if it heard a rhythm it was not built to understand, what would it do? The assumption hung in the air, heavy as stone. The floor was secure. It had to be. The entire idea of the Aegis depended on it. GRZZ decided he would attend the performance. He would watch, not just with his eyes, but with his whole body, feeling for the tremor he could not prove existed. The day before the performance, the cultural hall was alive with a different kind of energy. It was not the quiet hum of the station systems, but the sharp, clear sounds of wood on leather and metal on metal. The air felt charged. Myung stood to the side, her eyes moving between her 4 performers. Dae-hyun, a man with calm, focused hands, was tuning the jangu, the hourglass drum. He tightened the ropes, tapping the skin and listening with his whole head tilted. Ji-won tested the bright, piercing ring of the small gong, the kwangwari. Young-soo adjusted his grip on the stick for the larger gong, while Hannah checked the stand for her barrel drum, the buk. From the top of the Yongnam farmer's rhythm, Myung said, "Remember, it's not in your hands. It's in your feet. It's in your knees. The earth should feel it." Kwon had come to give a final safety check, but he found himself lingering by the door. He watched as they took their positions. They did not just stand ready. They planted themselves. Their stances were wide and low, knees bent, feet solidly on the stage floor. It was a posture of stability, of connection to the ground. Dae-hyun gave a slow, silent nod. Then he started. The first beat from the jangu was crisp and deep. It was not just a sound, it was a signal. The others joined. The buk thumped a steady heartbeat. The gongs sliced through the air with ringing accents. The rhythm was not a simple tune. It was complex, layered, and powerful. Kwon's eyes widened. This was not what he had imagined. He had thought of a musical performance. He saw now it was athletic. It was vigorous. Dae-hyun's whole body moved as he played, his shoulders rotating, his torso twisting. Every strike on the drum was powered from his core. And with certain accents, his foot would stomp down. Thump. Not a casual tap, but a deliberate, driving impact that came from the hip. Ji-won, playing the small gong, moved with quick, sharp energy. She would rise on her toes and then drop down into her knees, the motion ending with a strike of the gong and a slap of her foot. Clang thud. Young-soo and Hannah provided the deep, pounding foundation, their bodies rocking forward and back with the effort, their feet marking time with heavy, grounded steps. The rhythm built, started slow like a heart waking up, and then it began to run. The beats came faster. The dancers' movements became larger. They were not just playing music for an audience. They were speaking to each other, calling and responding with their instruments and their bodies. Their breathing synced. Their stomps landed at the exact same instant. Thump, clang thud, thump thump thump. Kwon felt it. Through the soles of his boots, a faint, rhythmic vibration traveled up his legs. It was subtle, like the distant echo of machinery. He looked down at the floor, then at his datapad. It showed the real-time structural feedback for the stage area. Small, green spikes appeared with each synchronized stomp. They were well within the green zone, barely a flicker. But they were perfectly regular. A steady, pounding pulse in the data stream. Myung walked over to him, her face glowing. "You see? It's the joy of work. The joy of a community doing something hard. Together." Kwon kept his eyes on the data. "Their synchronization is precise." "It has to be," she said. "If one person is off, the energy breaks. The spirit of it falls apart. It's about being one body, one voice." She watched Dae-hyun, a sheen of sweat already on his forehead. His grandfather was a farmer in Gyeongsang. He said his grandfather would play this after a harvest, his feet so sore from the fields but still finding the strength to dance. That weight, that history, it's in the music. Quan understood history as dates and events. He understood the weight of a beam or a starship hull. This was a different kind of weight. It was invisible, but he could feel its effect in the tremble of the floor. The group reached a crescendo, a furious, joyful storm of sound and motion. All four of them were in the air for a moment, coming down together in a final, thunderous stomp that shook the stage and sent a clear, physical jolt through Quan's boots. Silence fell, broken only by their heavy breathing. The datapad screen showed the last impact spike. It was the highest, but still comfortably in the green. It was fine. The math held. Daehyun looked over, catching his breath. Director Quan, is the stage okay? Feels solid. Quan nodded, forcing a smile. It's perfect. The readings are all normal. He believed it. The numbers said it was true. But his body remembered the vibration. It remembered the rhythm traveling through the metal. The floor's damping systems had reacted to each stomp, just as designed. But had they reacted to the pattern? He thought of GRZZ's warning about a resonant pattern. He pushed the thought away. The floor was fortified. It dispersed energy. A pattern was just a series of single events. Myung clapped her hands. Beautiful. That's the feeling. Tomorrow we share that feeling with the whole station. The performers smiled, wiping their faces. They talked in low, happy voices about a tricky transition. They were thinking about art, about culture, about sharing a piece of home. Quan left the hall. In the quiet corridor, the station floor felt utterly dead and still under his feet. It was just a floor again. The memory of the vibration seemed silly. He had let Myung's talk of spirit and history get into his head. Engineering was not about spirit. It was about facts. The facts were clear. The floor was rated for tons. The humans weighed less than half a ton together. Their impacts were minor. The system was designed to handle far worse. There was no logical, factual reason for concern. Yet, as he walked back to his office, a small, quiet doubt echoed in his mind, keeping time with his steps. What if security wasn't just about the weight of the body? What if it was also about the weight of the intention behind it? And how did you measure that? His datapad had no column for that. The station's mighty fortifications had never been asked to hold against something like that before. The main concourse of the Aegis station had been transformed. The usual orderly flow of alien traffic was gone, replaced by a colorful, noisy crowd. Beings of all shapes and sizes stood or sat or floated in designated areas. The air buzzed with the hum of translators and the curious chatter of 100 different languages. The central stage, a simple, raised platform of the fortified nanoalloy, stood empty under the soft spotlight. Quan stood at his designated observation post near a service pillar. His datapad was linked to the floor's integrity sensors. A small, glowing hologram above the pad showed a schematic of the stage, pulsing with a steady, calm blue. All systems were optimal. He kept his eyes on it, a sailor watching a radar screen in calm seas. Myung was near the stage, speaking with a tall, willowy diplomat from the Crystal Federation. She looked calm, but Quan could see the tight line of her shoulders. This was her moment. Across the concourse, he spotted GRZZ. The Torvan engineer stood like a boulder in a stream, the crowd parting around him. He was not looking at the stage, but at the floor. His head was tilted as if listening. The station's director, a graceful being with silver skin, made a short announcement of welcome over the speakers. Then they introduced the human contribution, a traditional Earth rhythm, expressing communal effort and celebration. The four performers walked onto the stage. They wore simple, white and colored clothing that allowed for movement. They carried their instruments. To the gathered aliens, they looked small and unremarkable against the vastness of the concourse. There was a polite, curious silence. Daehyun caught Myung's eye. She gave a single, firm nod. He turned to his fellow performers, and they shared a look that was not about the audience. It was a private, shared focus. They took their positions. The wide, low stances, feet planted, instruments held ready. The first hit of the jangu cut through the quiet air. It was a clean, sharp sound that made a few beings flinch. Then the book joined, a deep, resonant thump that you could feel in your chest. The gongs added their bright, ringing voices. Started slow, a steady, walking rhythm. The audience watched, sensors and eyes recording. Many saw it as a curious auditory and visual display. The synchronization was noted, filed as an interesting cultural trait. Quan watched his datapad. With the first synchronized foot stomp, a tiny green spike appeared on the schematic. Then another. They were small, regular, just like in rehearsal. He allowed himself a small breath. It was fine. But then the rhythm began to change. It was like a machine coming up to speed. The beats came closer together. The movements of the performers grew larger, more powerful. Daehyun was no longer just playing a drum. He was fighting it, wrestling music from it with his whole body. Each strike was a full rotation of his shoulders, a drop of his weight. The stomps were not just markers. They were exclamations. Thump, clang thud, thump thump thump. The sound filled the concourse, bouncing off the distant walls. But more than the sound, the vibration began to spread. It traveled through the stage into the main floor. Quan felt it through the soles of his boots, a steady, rhythmic trembling. He looked from his datapad to the stage. The performers were a blur of motion and sound, sweat flying from Daehyun's brow under the lights. The holographic schematic was no longer a calm blue. It was a field of green spikes, each one taller than the last, coming in a perfect, rapid, relentless rhythm. They were still in the green zone, but they were climbing. The damping systems were working, reacting to each impact, but the impacts were like hammer blows on the same exact spot, over and over, faster and faster. The music was not just something to hear now. It was something you felt in your bones. The Crystal Federation beings nearby had started to vibrate slightly, a faint, sympathetic hum. GRZZ had not moved. He was staring at the point where the performer's feet met the stage, his body rigid. G1 let out a sharp, high shout, a traditional Chu-MC, as she struck her gong and drove her foot down. The others echoed her. Their faces were not smiling. They were intense, focused, lost in the shared rhythm of it. It was the farmer's joy, the worker's triumph, the powerful release after long labor. It was human history, distilled into movement and noise. The rhythm reached its peak. It was a furious, beautiful storm. All four humans were moving as one creature, up in the air for a leap, then down together. Thump crack. The sound was wrong. It was not the clean thud of a footfall. It was a sharp, sickening crack, like the breaking of a giant tree branch, cut through the music like a knife. The performance stopped dead. The last ringing note of the gong hung in the sudden, terrible silence. All eyes dropped to the stage floor. There, originating from the center where their feet had landed in unison, was a single hairline fracture. It was not long, but it was deep and clear, a black scar on the smooth, metallic gray surface. A tiny wisp of inert nanoparticle dust drifted from it. For a full 3 seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. The entire concourse was frozen. Quan's datapad flashed a soft, amber alert. Not red, just a caution. The schematic showed the fracture as a tiny, jagged red line. The system registered it as a minor surface flaw. It did not understand. Daehyun looked down at the crack between his feet, his face blank with shock. Ji-won's hand went to her mouth. The crowd's silence broke into a wave of confused murmurs and translated clicks of alarm. Quan's eyes were locked on that black line. His mind went empty of all his numbers, all his confidence. He heard his own words from yesterday echo in his head like a joke. The floor is fortified for security. It will hold. But it hadn't. Under the weight of 4 average humans making music, it had fractured. The impossible had happened. And as he stared, the only thing he could think was that GRZZ had been right. The floor had not been listening for this. And now it had spoken back. The silence in the concourse was broken by the swift, automated voice of the station. Minor structural anomaly detected. Sector is secure. Please remain calm. Engineering and security teams, please respond. Yellow guide lights illuminated a safe path off the stage. The performers stood frozen, still holding their instruments, staring at the black line at their feet as if it were a live snake. Quan was moving before he knew it. His professional training took over, shoving aside the shock. He strode to the stage, his datapad now showing a full diagnostic scan. He held up a hand to Myung, who had rushed forward, her face pale. "Stay back. Let the system assess." The crowd was being gently ushered back by floating service drones. But many lingered, their curiosity overpowering the directive. A cultural performance had become a different kind of spectacle. GRZZ arrived at the stage a moment later, his heavy steps now cautious. He did not step onto the platform. He knelt beside it, his large, sensitive fingers hovering just above the fracture. He did not touch it. "Do not step on it," he rumbled to the performers. His voice was not angry, but deeply serious. "Move off, slowly, one at a time." The performers obeyed, moving with careful, shell-shocked steps to the solid floor beyond the stage. Daehyun was the last, his eyes still glued to the crack he had helped make. Kwan's scan finished. He read the results, his mind struggling to make sense of them. It's a surface-level fracture in the nanoalloy's bonding layer. Depth is less than 2 millimeters. No breach of the deck beneath. No pressure loss. The structural grid underneath is completely unaffected. GRZZ looked up at him. "That is not the point, Architect Kwan. The surface is the structure. It is the fortified layer. It should not have failed. Not from this." "It didn't fail from a single impact," Kwan said, his voice tight. He pulled up the force data from the performance. The hologram displayed a wild, rhythmic dance of green spikes. "Look, no single stomp, even the last one, exceeded the stress tolerance for a Class 1 load. That's the weight of a small human child. Individually, they were all harmless." "Show me the pattern," GRZZ said. Kwan filtered the data, isolating the force signatures and plotting them on a timeline. The result was clear and terrifying in its simplicity. It was not a series of random spikes. It was a perfect, sine wave-like rhythm of force, rising in amplitude as the music intensified. Each stomp landed at the precise moment the previous one's vibrational energy was still echoing through the material. "It was a harmonic," GRZZ stated, the words sounding heavy and final. "They found the floor's resonant frequency. They did not hit it harder. They hit it smarter. They sang a note the material was forced to answer." Myung had come closer, listening. "They weren't trying to break anything. They were just playing." "That is what the security systems assumed," GRZZ replied, standing. "They are programmed to look for a malicious impact, a collision, an explosion. They look for a single, large threat. They are not programmed to see 1,000 small, friendly pushes, all in perfect time. The damping systems reacted to each push, but they could not recover before the next one arrived. The stress compounded. It built up, wave upon wave, inside the material itself. Kwan finally understood. He saw it now not as an architect, but as a student who had missed the most important lesson. The fortifications were a shield against a sword thrust. But humanity had just used 1,000 gentle, perfectly timed taps in the same spot. The shield, designed to deflect force, had instead been asked to absorb and hold a rhythm. And it had gotten tired. It had given up. "The floor was fortified for security," Kwan muttered, almost to himself. "But it was fortified against the wrong thing." A security officer, a bipedal avian named Klek, approached. "We need to seal the area for a full investigation. This will be reported as an incident." "That is correct," GRZZ said. "It is an incident of category reevaluation." The performers were gathered in a huddle. G1 was crying silently, not from fear, but from a profound sense of having done something wrong. "We broke it," she whispered. "We broke the floor." Myung went to them. She put a hand on G1's shoulder. "No, you didn't break it. You revealed it." She looked at the crack, then at Kwan and GRZZ. "You built a floor to hold the weight of giants and machines, but you didn't build it to hold the weight of our togetherness. You didn't know it could be so heavy. Quan looked from the crying woman to the fracture, and then to the sea of alien faces watching from a distance. Their expressions were no longer curious. They were cautious, reconsidering. The humans were not violent. They had not used tools or weapons. They had used a drum, a dance, and perfect unity. And that had done what a cargo loader could not. The crack was small. It would be repaired in an hour. But the fracture in understanding was vast. The assumption of human averageness lay in pieces. Their weight was not just in their bodies. It was in their shared timing, their collective will, their ability to turn individual effort into a single powerful force. Quan finally met GRZZ's gaze. The Torvan engineer gave a slow, grave nod. There was no accusation in it. There was, if anything, a somber respect. The unknown had shown its face. It was not a monster. It was a rhythm. "Seal the area," Quan said to Officer Kleck, his voice firm again. "I need full access to the material stress logs. And someone please get the performers some water. They have given us very valuable data." He looked once more at the black line on the gray floor, a scar that changed everything. The floor was fortified, but it had not been fortified for humans. Not for humans like this. The repair was quick. A maintenance drone, looking like a large silver beetle, crawled over the stage. It cleaned the fracture and laid down a fresh stream of liquid nanoalloy. The material bonded and hardened in minutes, leaving the surface as smooth and unbroken as it had been that morning. But everyone knew the fix was only skin deep. In a quiet analysis room, Quan, Myung, and GRZZ sat with the data. The hollow display between them showed the ruthless, beautiful truth of the performance. The wave pattern of force was undeniable. "It is not a flaw in the material," GRZZ said, his low voice filling the small space. "It is a flaw in the philosophy. We design our security to resist the alien, the other, the attacker. We build walls and floors to keep danger out or to contain it. But this was not an attack from outside. It was a phenomenon from within, a cultural resonance." Myung leaned forward. They were connected, not by wires or nets, but by the music, by the count in their heads. Daehyun leads, but they are all listening, feeling. When one moves, the others move not because they see it, but because they know it. It is one mind in four bodies. Quan stared at the sine wave. So the floor's security was passive. It waited for a threat and then reacted. But their rhythm was active. It was a continuous, deliberate command. The damping systems were always one step behind, playing catch-up until the stress accumulated past the material's fatigue limit. He felt a hollow feeling in his stomach. He had been so proud of that floor. We asked it to be a shield. They asked it to be a drum. And it could not be both. A notification chimed. It was a request from the station director's office. They wanted a preliminary report. The subject line read, "Incident. Unauthorized structural stress event." Unauthorized. Myung read, a flash of anger in her eyes. They were invited to perform. They followed every rule. "But they used a tool not in the rulebook," GRZZ said. "There is no rule against synchronized stomping. Why would there be? It was not a known vector. Now it is." The door slid open, and Daehyun entered. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped. "The others are resting. I needed to know. What did we do wrong?" "You did nothing wrong," Quan said immediately, surprising himself. "Your math was just better than mine." Daehyun looked confused. Myung pointed to the wave on the screen. "You found a hidden note in the floor's own song. You sang it back to it, louder and louder, until it had to answer." GRZZ turned his chair to face Daehyun. "Performers, are you always this precise?" "To do it right, yes," Daehyun said. "If the rhythm is off, it feels dead. It is not Samulnori anymore. It is just noise. We practice until we don't have to think. We just feel the one beat." "One beat," GRZZ echoed. He looked at Quan. "A single point of focus. Not four humans. One force." The implications began to unspool in the quiet room. Quan's mind, trained for physical problems, started mapping the new threat landscape. crowd control barriers, bridge designs on joint colony worlds, even the stability of large, multi-species spaceship crews during high-stress events. Human unity was not just a social ideal. It was a measurable, physical phenomenon that could stress systems built to handle chaos and conflict, but not perfect harmony. The Concorde's security profiles will need an update, Quan said quietly. What will they call it? Myung asked. A new threat category. Cultural hazard? GRZZ made a deep, thoughtful sound. It is not a hazard. A hazard is a thing to be removed or blocked. This is a capability, a property of your species. You do not bear down as solitary beings. You resonate as a collective. Your security vulnerability is also your strength. The fracture showed us both at once. Daehyun slowly sat down, the weight of the understanding settling on him. So, our tradition, our music, it's a strength? Even after breaking the floor. You did not break the floor. Jerzy corrected him again firmly. You taught the floor a lesson. And you taught us one. We measured your individual weight, your bone density, your muscle strength. We put those numbers in a file and called it human. But we did not measure the weight of your shared intention. That number was not in the file. Now it must be. Quan finally looked away from the screen. He looked at Daehyun's worried face, at Myung's defiant one, at GRZZ's stony, thoughtful expression. The initial embarrassment was gone. In its place was a raw, professional awe. He had spent his career believing that to make something secure, you made it stronger, harder, thicker. But humanity had just demonstrated a different principle. True security wasn't about being unmovable. It was about being adaptable. It was about understanding not just the weight of a body, but the rhythm of a heart and the power of many hearts beating as one. The floor had been strong, but it had been stupid. It had fortifications, but no ears. The report to the director, Quan said, standing up. We will not call it an unauthorized structural stress event. He took a breath. We will call it a demonstration of unmodeled human collective kinetics. And we will recommend that the Concorde's architectural and security guidelines be reviewed, not to forbid our music, but to understand it, so that next time the floor can listen and choose to dance with us instead of fighting a battle it cannot win. A small, slow smile appeared on Myung's face. Daehyun sat up a little straighter. GRZZ gave a single, solid nod of approval. The lesson was learned. The fracture was healed. But the echo of the drumbeats, it seemed, would change the station forever. One standard week later, the main concourse looked normal again. The crowd flowed. Aliens of every shape went about their business, and the memory of the fracture seemed to have faded into station legend. But for those who knew where to look, small changes were everywhere. Quan stood on the edge of the concourse, near the stage. The nanoalloy floor was seamless. He knelt and placed his hand flat on the cool surface. With his other hand, he tapped a command into his datapad. A new, simple interface appeared. He selected an option labeled Damping Profile, Cultural Event, Rhythmic Loading. Beneath his palm, he felt a subtle shift. The floor didn't change visually, but its tactile feedback softened. It was now slightly more absorbent, more ready to disperse not just a single impact, but a pattern of them. It was a small patch, a silent update to the station's operating system. The official report had been accepted. The term unmodeled human collective kinetics was now in the Concorde's engineering databases. It was not listed under failures or security breaches. It was filed under new considerations for interspecies design. Myung found him there. She carried a small box. They're leaving today, she said. The performers. Their rotation is up. They're being reassigned to a transport vessel. Quan stood. Are they in trouble? No, not at all. But I think they want to go. This place holds a strange memory for them now. She opened the box. Inside, on a bed of soft cloth, lay the small Kwangwari gong. It was slightly dented from the performance. Ji-won wanted you to have this, she said. She said you should remember that not all important forces come from engines. Quan took the gong carefully. It was lighter than he expected. He ran a thumb over the dent. I don't need a reminder. I feel it in the floor every day. They walked together toward the docking bay. The changes were subtle, but present. New vibration sensors, small and disc-shaped, were now installed at the edges of large open spaces. Their purpose was not to listen for explosions, but to monitor crowd rhythms. In a maintenance corridor, Quan saw two engineers, one human and one Torvan, discussing a schematic. The Torvan was pointing to a support beam. We must calculate for possible resonant frequency here, if human crews are working in synchronized cycles, the engineer said. It was a normal part of the conversation now. They found the performers near their departure gate. Their bags were packed. They looked more relaxed than the last time Quan had seen them. Daehyun saw the gong in Quan's hand and smiled a little. You fixed the floor, Daehyun said. We updated it, Quan corrected. Thanks to you. Ji-won stepped forward. We were afraid we had caused a disaster. You caused an understanding, a low voice said. GRZZ approached from the other side of the corridor. He carried a data crystal. My team's analysis. It is not confidential. It is for you. He handed it to Daehyun. It shows the wave you created. It is efficient. There is beauty in efficient physics. Daehyun took the crystal, holding it like a precious thing. Thank you. The galaxy concord is vast, GRZZ continued, looking at all of them. It is built on rules and measurements. We thought we had measured you. We were wrong. Now, the measurement includes your resonance. This is better. Security that does not understand its people is not security. It is just a wall waiting to be misunderstood. The final call for their ship echoed through the bay. Goodbyes were short and quiet. Myung hugged each performer. Quan shook their hands, the human gesture feeling suddenly important. As they walked up the ramp, Ji-won turned back. She looked not at the people, but at the floor of the docking bay. Then she looked at Quan and gave a final, small nod. The ship detached and drifted away into the star-filled dark. Quan, Myung, and GRZZ stood watching for a moment in silence. The station hummed around them, a giant, complex machine. What now? Myung asked. Now we listen better, Quan said. He looked at the gong in his hand, then at the solid, fortified floor beneath his feet. It was the same floor, but it was also completely different. It was no longer just a barrier. It was a student, and so was he. GRZZ placed a heavy hand on Quan's shoulder, a gesture of significant weight and respect. The floor was fortified for security, fractured under human weight. Now it is fortified for a deeper security, one that knows the weight of a drumbeat. He turned and walked away, his steps still absorbed perfectly by the intelligent surface. Myung linked her arm with Quan's. Come on, she said. I want to show you some old Earth designs for wooden bridges. The ones that swayed. The engineers back then, they understood a little bit about dancing with forces. Quan smiled. It was a real smile, the first in days. He held the little gong carefully. He didn't need to play it. Its sound was already in the bones of the station. A quiet, permanent lesson in the metal. The floor was secure. Not because it was too strong to break, but because it had finally learned what it was truly holding up. Not just bodies, but history, and unity, and the incredible, tangible weight of people moving as one.